At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Welcome to Fall Rise Give, a space where we invite you to dig into the real cause of your suffering, looking at opportunities for growth with a change in your beliefs, thoughts, and actions so you can be your true self and be inspired. Join us as we explore life's ups and downs and navigate the twists and turns, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of giving back. Whether you're looking for a change, in recovery, or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your go-to for candid conversations, raw emotions, and a whole lot of heart. Tune in and discover how to fall, rise, and give back on life's extraordinary journey. Welcome to another edition of Fall, Rise, Give, turning struggles into opportunities by being your true self and help others. Welcome back to the episode, my friends. I'm Bob Schmidt. That, my friend, is Kumar. And we're talking about something that we'll all face eventually, tough times, whether it's financial stress, burnout, life throwing unexpected curveballs, or all three while you're trying to drink your cup of coffee in peace. This one, my friends, this is for you. Kumar, how's it been?
It's been going okay, Bob. It hasn't been going great. Last couple of weeks have been challenging, and so the topic at hand was a good one to think about. Like, what do people do to go through tough times? And so, going through some tough times on the personal side of things, going through some decent times in the work life situation. But I wanted to talk about a topic on tough times. What do people do when they go through tough times? How to have a good perspective, how to not avoid your pain, be in the pain a little bit, but don't be victimized by it, and don't look at shame and negative emotions, things like that.
Do you have any strategies that you personally use when you go through difficult times?
What's interesting is I think we all, when we go through tough times, we all reach out for help. And when I say help, we usually pray to God, right? A lot of people will pray like, oh, my mother is sick, or I'm sick, or something's going on, or my partner is sick. The first thing that we do is we usually pray, and that's not a bad thing to do. I think that seeking of help from outside or higher power, we have to be open to that kind of relief. Prayer can't hurt, right? It may or may not help the situation, but it doesn't usually hurt it. And the thing that I was thinking about as I was working out this morning and looking at the topic is maybe be open. Maybe don't look at the victim side of things and be open to other people. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's an angel in the form of a friend like Bob coming on the street and saying, hey, Vipin, it's going to be okay. They might lend an ear at least. They may pray with you. They may just show you some love and respect. And so be open to those kind of angels. So that's kind of the early onset thinking that I had about this topic.
So for me, this last week was kind of tough because 7 years ago, like earlier this week, I got let go from my radio job. And, at the time, it was one of the things that it was hurtful. It really angered me. It made me mad. And I really thought that my life was going to be over because I love doing the radio thing. I love doing this, and my job kind of defined me. But thinking about it now, 7 years outside, that it really didn't define me. Radio for me was a job, and it was something I enjoyed doing. And now I found a new gig that I really enjoy doing, with bartending and with podcasting. So, I think a lot of times if we let things go and if we don't let things kind of take over our entire lives, we'll be fine. We'll be good. And, a year after that, I went through my divorce, and a year after that, there's always something that can probably pull you down. But if you don't let yourself get pulled down, you'll probably rise up and become, a bigger, stronger, better version of who you are.
Yeah. And that's why it's interesting, right? It goes back to falling, right? When we go through a hard time, we fall. And like you said, we rise over time, give it some time, maybe be with that pain or that suffering. Don't try to avoid it, right? Avoidance is a big problem. And saying, what is this lesson telling me? What are my options? What are ways that I can be a better person? Usually, there's a book out there by Rabbi Kushner called "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?" And he says in the book, bad things happen to good people to make them better people. And so a lot of good people do suffer. Almost everyone suffers. Some people are lucky they don't. But the human experience is to suffer on this planet of ours. And what we think of our suffering, what we think of our pain, and how we sit with it and let it just absorb it. And if it's in the sense of, losing your job, I've been there a number of times, and then you just try to get back on the horse and apply for different jobs, apply for, it's same thing in the field or something different, and try to, like you were doing website stuff, you're doing creative things to develop new skills for yourself and helping people with marketing. And so that's what you have to do. You have to be creative. You don't have to do anything. First of all, I use the word have to. I think what I want to do when I'm in the suffering is, I usually pray to my higher power, which is in what we talked about, Christianity and Catholicism is God and Jesus. But I don't put that on anybody else. I respect people of all faiths and all sorts, but, prayer is universal for a lot of people. And so praying to a higher power, whatever that is for you, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever that is, usually helps. And then we look for possibilities. Maybe there's an earth angel out there. Maybe ask for help from a family member or a friend. And be vulnerable. Be in your pain. Don't try to think you got it all covered and you got to do it alone. We are social beings, right? And so you usually have one or two friends, people that you can talk to. If not, maybe seek something out through a counseling hotline or things like that. There are lots of resources for people when they go through a hard time. Just got to be open to it.
One of the things that I've been trying to do lately, Kumar, is that if I think of somebody, do you remember Jason Brown that we went to high school with?
Yeah.
So the other day I was driving to La Crosse to watch my grandkids, and his name just popped into my head. So I called the number that I had for him.
Yeah.
Because the last time we talked was probably 15 years ago. And I left a message. I said, hey Jason, if this is still Jason's number, because it didn't really sound like him when I left the message. Yeah. Because the voicemail picked up. And I said, I'm thinking about you, and I made a pact to myself. If I think of somebody, I'm going to try reaching out to them, trying to find, what they're up to and see how they're doing. Because I think a lot of times we all go through like difficult times in our lives, like we're kind of talking about. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach out and talk to him because I left that message. I left my telephone number. I kind of left a little bit of a backstory explaining this and how I've been reaching out to people. And I'm hoping that eventually I'll reach out and touch them again, or at least talk to them, because I think it's important that we connect with people and, connect with people that we used to know, connect with people that we do know. And as you mentioned, you're the street angels, connect with people that we don't even know that could end up being a big part of our lives, Yeah. Just like, well, kind of like you and I just reconnecting a couple of years ago. I mean, we graduated in 1987 from high school, hadn't talked to each other for dozens of years, decades, and then we reached out, and and for the last year and a half, you've been a person that I enjoy talking to on a regular basis. We catch up now at least once a month, which is great.
Yeah. No, I think that's it. I really like your idea. If I'm thinking about somebody, I'm going to call them. Somebody sent me a Facebook post about telepathy is real. So when somebody's thinking about you or you're thinking about somebody, maybe they're thinking about you as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think there is a universal knowledge or energy in the ether that people connect. And there's been lots of research done in metaphysics and quantum physics lately about people connecting and guessing and being psychic across the world. People in Russia thinking about people in Nevada and researching and seeing what's happening there without any electronic connection, just by their own brain, thinking about the same thing and guessing the right answers. And so there's a lot to that. I think sometimes, like the other day, or was it last night that you sent me a text? I was thinking about you and the topic of the podcast. You sent me a text right when I was thinking about the topic of the podcast. I was just like, and so I think this connection thing with people is real. I want to bring a story of an example of my father when he passed away. So I was a junior in college. I was living in the dorms as a junior because my dad was sick, and I knew that he was sick and probably on his last leg. He had cancer. And as he passed away, somehow one of my friends, who was a really spiritual person, really beautiful soul, really. And she gave me a list of prayers and quotes from the Bible on a piece of paper or a notebook or something. I chatted with her a few times about it, and then she guided me through it. But I remember her specifically. There was no relationship there. She was a friend of a friend. She wasn't a close friend of mine. And she came around and she gave me these prayers that I would read almost daily at that time as I was suffering when my father passed away. And so I don't even remember her name. I don't, all I have is the energy and the look of the person. But I remember at the time, she was an angel for me at the time. And so she helped me through a hard time. I went through a similar situation when I worked at Microsoft. I was going through a hard time there with some situations. And a friend of mine from the office gave me a book about angels and how angels and going through different scenarios about going through hard times is really makes us a better person. And so people have in my life have come along when I go through a hard time, but I'm also open to it. I reach out, I share my vulnerabilities. I'm like, hey, Bob, I'm going through a hard time right now. And would you want to hear about it? I talked to a couple of good friends yesterday about my situation, and I got really good advice from both of them. It wasn't the same advice. It was opposing advice. And so, but I did get good advice. I got both sides of the coin, you know what I mean? And so thinking about that, sit with it, to pray about it. So going through a hard time, you're usually not alone. Other people are going through a hard time. And so that's one way.
You know, I think that one thing that I think a lot of us are missing out is you said that you're open to it. And I think a lot of people that have things that happen to them don't have their eyes open when it's happening, you know, or right when it's over, because, and what I mean is metaphorically eyes open, because we all have our eyes open when we're walking through the day, but sometimes we don't see the things that are right in front of us. So, I mean, we don't see the person that's there to help you out. We don't see the fact that, you know, this book you walked by 18 times at the store, or saw at the library, or a commercial you saw on television or heard on the radio, or a Facebook post that you may have just glanced by. Some of those things, even though you think they're stupid at the time, they're helpful if you take it in and you absorb what is there. You know, for me, one of the strategies that works for me when I'm having a really difficult time is I live on 2 acres of land right next to a creek. I grab a cup of coffee, I sit on my back deck, I look out, and even though there's traffic around me, I can hear the traffic and see the cars, I try to focus in on the creek and the babbling of the brook and the fact that there's water running through my land and that there's trees there and birds, and just taking in the nature and the things that are there. And that actually helps calm me down and brings me to a point where I feel at peace with myself. And when I feel at peace with myself, then, you know, I tend to share that with those around me, you know, like my partner, Monique, with my kids, with my grandkids, with my ex-wife. We're all still friends. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so all of these things kind of stem from the fact that, you know, I noticed that this is there, and I know it's not there just for me, but for me, I took it in and was able to connect with it, you know?
Yeah. No, I think you have a very powerful message about nature too, right? And I think when being in nature, being outside, it's very healing for a lot of people. And especially being in nature where there's more trees and more greenery, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I usually go to a couple of parks nearby where I used to go to those parks a lot more. Maybe I'll do that again sometime soon. But being in nature for me, going for dog walks, smelling the roses, the dog will want to stop, and I wouldn't want to stop at the time. But I'm like, you know what? Maybe he's trying to tell me something, and maybe the universe is trying to tell me something.
I want to I want to circle back to smelling the roses. So I don't know if I mentioned that I have twins. They're 23 years old right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And when they were little kids, this is kind of a gross but funny story. When they were little kids, they'd walk into the bathroom after somebody went to the bathroom, and I remember saying that, oh, it smells like roses. You know, you walk in there, they're like, oh, yuck. I'm like, no, that smells like roses. Well, we were at the St. Paul, conservatory in St. Paul at Como Park.
Yeah.
And you know how they have a rose room?
Yeah.
The kids were like 2 or 3 or I don't know, 4, something like that. They were just little kids at the time. We walk in and I'm like, yeah, kids, this is the rose room. And then, and one of the twins said, no, don't go in there. Plug your nose.
It's funny. It's funny that you guys, you reprogram them, think roses are...
Right, but humor, but just saying stories like that or remembering things like that is another good way to get over some of these things that are difficult. Laughing is really a good form of medicine. I try to laugh or bring smiles to people every single day, and with me, a lot of times it's with sarcasm and with quick-witted one-liners or whatever. But I think laughing is an important part of your life and an everyday life for everybody.
Yeah, I think laughter is underrated. I think laughter is a simple way of feeling joy and getting outside of ourselves. And laughter is amazing. That's why I think I'll go on YouTube or I'll go on Reels, and I'll usually search on YouTube for a comedian named Fluffy or Russell, whatever his name is, an Indian guy who's really funny, and Russell Peters, and I'll go in and I'll search him and I'll watch and listen to comedy for a good 10, 20 minutes, and I'll laugh my ass off, right? Have you heard of Fluffy? You know who Fluffy is?
I have not.
Okay, you got
Russell Peters. I'm gonna write that down so I can go and take a look at.
Russell Peters is an Indian guy out of Toronto. He's hilarious. He does a lot of international jokes. He grew up in an international community in Toronto. Toronto's a very international town, and Fluffy, just search for Fluffy, is a different person. And Fluffy is Gabriel Iglesias, I think his name is.
Oh, yep. So do you remember when we talked to Chris Jones, the hypnotist?
Yeah.
He had a TV show and he hypnotized one of Fluffy's fans not to know who Fluffy was.
Yeah.
And so, and that was very funny. If you have an opportunity to look for that, but anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had forgotten who Fluffy was until you mentioned that. I thought you were talking about one person, with Russell Peters and Fluffy being
the two different comedians. I like them both a lot, and Fluffy is just hilarious. Fluffy recently went to India in the last year or two, and he talks about his show there, and he meets some German guys that have this dry sense of not too much humor, right? They're very serious. And they were sitting in front row, and he has this huge, storyline around what they were reacting to his jokes and not reacting. And he's just hilarious. So yeah, laughter is underrated. Find a comedy show, search for Fluffy on your YouTube channel, whoever you are, you'll get a good laugh out of it. The other thing that I tend to do more often, and I tend to listen to music, especially when I get up in the morning and I go to the gym. And so music has another healing power, I think. So nature, laughter, music, exercising, walking in the woods, whatever your jam is, That helps a lot to go through these hard times. The whole idea is to get outside of yourself. Get outside of your self-pity party. Pray. Think about others. Think about how grateful you are. That's another one. Gratefulness. How we live in a great country. You may not get everything that you want, but you usually have food and shelter. You have safety around where you have. You have clothes on your back, and you have a lot more resources than a lot of people in the world. 2/3 of the world lives well below poverty level, and so for us to be grateful for what we have gets us out of ourselves and gets us thinking about abundance and gets us thinking about how we can actually look at our challenges and our suffering and maybe, start to turn into a positive thinking mindset. When you're negative and you're feeling the self-pity and doubt and fear and anxiety, those are negative spiral type emotions. But as soon as you start thinking about how grateful you are, you start thinking on the positive side of things. You start to get your vibration levels a little higher. You start to think about the possibilities of what maybe that job wasn't the right job for you. Maybe God was protecting you. Maybe you would have had a heart attack in that job because it was so stressful, but you didn't realize at the time.
Right.
And so that's the way I look at it. That's how I've gone through a hard time and going through one right now. I do a lot of prayer. I pray and meditate. Probably don't meditate as much as I used to, but still I do meditate daily, good 20, 30 minutes. I was meditating 2 to 3 times a day, as I was telling you earlier in the podcast, for a good half an hour, 45 minutes each. But still meditation and prayer, they all go together to kind of center, calm you, and put you into that loving, compassionate energy.
One of the things that we haven't really talked much about is you have a Facebook group called Spiritual Mindset, right?
Yeah.
And you've been working on that one for a while, and I get Facebook notifications when something new gets posted on there, and there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of stuff like what we're talking about right now that is on that page.
Yeah. Now, Spiritual Mindset has got about 1.6 million followers, about 500,000 or plus in the U.S. It's really an international group, but tons of people from Australia, Canada, India, and there's a lot of good quotes out there, and we get a lot of positive messages. I try to post on that about 3 to 4 times a day. I go out to Instagram and find a bunch of cool quotes and memes, and then I post them and repost them on that. We get hundreds of likes for each post. We get a few thousand. We get about 10,000 people seeing each one of the posts. So it's quite a growing community. And I'd love to have people be part of it. Search for Spiritual Mindset on Facebook group.
Like you said, there's a lot of good quotes and things on there, and I just popped it on right when we're talking, and this kind of rings true with what we're talking about. Happiest people forgive, forget, love, help, care, smile. The happiest people are the givers, not the takers. Yeah. That's like the first one that popped up there. So I mean, if you're looking for some good quality information, that's a good place to go to, just in order to find something that'll bring you out of the funk that you might happen to be in. Because as we've talked about, we all end up being in a funk at one time or another, and the way you choose to deal with it is the way that it will go on with life.
Yeah. Think of the possibilities. Like we talked about the podcast before, fall, rise, give. You're going to fall. You're going to go through a hard time. You'll come out of it on the other end, hopefully better than you did before. You'll go through challenges, be learning lessons. I always say that I peaked when I was 31, financially and business-wise. I had sold a company and blah, blah, blah. But I may not have the resources that I had once had, but I'm happier, and I come out on the other end of it. I feel like I'm a better person. I feel like I have a lot more to give to the world than I did back then. Maybe I was, I was self-centered and self-righteous and not the person that I was proud to be. I had a lot more challenges around ego and anger, and I thought I was better than everybody else. I would throw these little fits around not getting what I wanted, and I remember at one point in a meeting, I threw like a chair or something, and I was disgusting behavior, really, for an egomaniac CEO of a company. And that's not the kind of person that I wanted to be. And I'm not that person anymore. If something's not working my way, I'll just pause and I'll just sit with it and I'll pray about it and I'll just I'll let the time pass. And usually with time, things do pass and things do come out on the other end. Usually for the better. It may not necessarily be better financially or better health wise or better job, but it'll be a better mindset. And that's really what it's all about. It's about your mindset. All of those things like finances, wealth, and all that stuff, they come and go. I think it's our mindset and what's between the ears that makes us truly happy by giving, by being more compassionate, by being who we truly want to be. Which is a loving, kind soul.
You hit the nail on the head many times on that, because my youngest son recently quit his job. His boss pissed him off, and he's like, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I'm done. And, we were talking about it, and he was worried about things. He's like, Dad, I don't know, what am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And we talked a lot about it, and I said, you know what? It's not the worst day in the world. It's probably the best day of your life. He goes, what do you mean? I said, kind of exactly what you just said, that you start at the bottom, but you work your way back up. So in that time, in the last month and a half since he walked away from his job, he started his own contracting business. He's got he passed the contractor's test. He's got business cards. He's got a Facebook following now on it, and he's been keeping himself busy every single day, and the jobs are going to keep getting bigger and bigger and better, and pay more and whatever. I said, so don't worry about the small days. We all have bad days. Every single person listening to this, every single person that's ever been alive, every single person that will be alive, all will have bad days, and all will have these days that we think, you know what, this is the worst possible day for anyone.
Yeah,
no. It might be the worst possible day at the time, but don't let that dictate who you are or what you will become, because if you do, then you start you are what somebody. So like when you're a kid and and a teacher says, you're a worthless piece of dog manure and blah blah blah, you start to think that. But if somebody says, you're good at this, and remember the old Stuart Smalley thing from gosh darn it, I'm good, I'm handsome, and if you start thinking positive things, you're going to go positive. If you start thinking negative things, you're going to be negative.
Yeah, no, I think Stuart Smalley. I think it was Saturday Night Live, right?
It was either Saturday Night Live or Fox's version of Saturday Night Live. But yeah. It was just one of those bits that I think everybody in our age group has probably seen multiple times and think, hey, gosh darn it, I'm good enough. I'm the best that there is at this situation or whatever.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I think the key there is positive affirmations, right? Like you said, you can have a pity party for a little bit. You can feel down and depressed for a little bit. And then you start to say, okay, what am I going to do about it now? Have some ownership, have some accountability. What was your role in the situation? Were you really not happy? The reason he quit his job, your son, was because he wasn't happy. He didn't like what the situation was. So he made a decision, and it didn't, for the short term, it doesn't look good because the income isn't there. But as you go down the path, you start to see better and better opportunities. You start to get out of that funk. And little by little, nothing is too permanent. I think there's death, taxes, and change. I think change is always going to be constant in this world. And so things are going to change. Nothing is permanent. And so people just got to remember that. And little by little, I know that I'm starting to feel better already about my situation. And little by little, we can help others be better. And so I think the thing also is, we talk about fall, rising. We're talking about rising right now, and then giving. As soon as you start to give, you start to become happier. I've told you, I have a friend who works with a lot of billionaires, and he said they're mostly miserable, except for about 10% of them. When they start to give their money away, start to give to charity, that's when they start feeling happy. That's when they're at their best. So start to give a little bit, think about others, and you'll ultimately start to feel happier. And you never know, by giving to someone, they may give something back to you. Usually a two-way street. It's not usually just you may give them advice, you may give them love, they may give you something, they may give you compassion, they may give you some tidbit or a connection. I had that scenario happen a bunch of times when I was out there raising money for my startup. I would be friends with people, I'd be kind to them, and next thing you know, they'd introduce me to somebody who invested in my company or whatever. And so connections will help you a lot, especially you get out of yourself and become a kind, giving person. You never know what you're going to get back.
No, you really certainly don't. We got a couple choices too each and every day. If you think about it, we've got the choice to either worry about stuff or to not worry about stuff. And you know what? I try to be the person that doesn't worry about stuff, even though that worry does sneak in and does get in the back of my head and does make me think, oh my God, am I doing this right? Am I blah, 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 blah. And most of the time, the stuff that I've worried about is stuff that never really comes around anyway. So don't worry about stuff. Just think about good things, and hopefully good things will happen,
Yeah. Worry, fear, and anxiety, they all kind of go together. And that's usually when we think about the future, when we're not present. We worry about future tripping. Not that you shouldn't think about the future. You should think about the future and plan it out. But I think these things don't help anything. As somebody had mentioned this quote, fear is false emotions that appear real. And so fear acronym, false emotions which appear real. And I think most of the time things that we're afraid of aren't really that big of a deal. A little bit of anxiety for a presentation that you have to do at work, or a little bit of extra work that you got to do to meet that client's needs, or a little bit of work that you got to do to finish a deadline for your wife or whatever, it's usually a good thing. But when it starts to get into a deeper worry, when you don't take action, that's when it becomes dangerous, right? Worry, fear, anxiety can be a good Kickstarter for action. But the key is to take some action around whatever you're feeling. And be grateful, man. Be grateful for whatever it is that you have. And that will help you turn your attitude around and get you out of your head and maybe help somebody else.
Like we've talked about before, the attitude of gratitude. I'm grateful for your friendship, Kumar. Any final thoughts?
The best thing that we can do for ourselves today is really love ourselves and love others. As soon as we start loving other people and caring for them, maybe today you're going out there listening to this podcast and you see somebody on the street, maybe the homeless guy, maybe you don't have $1 to give him, but just talk to him for 5 minutes, just saying, hey, how you doing? Everything okay? What's going on? I have a homeless guy down the street from me. I just talked to him about sports. He loves talking about sports. He reads the paper every day. He finds a paper in the little laundromat that he hangs out in, and he reads it, and he's up to speed on all the Minnesota sports and tells me about Minnesota sports, and I tell him about the scores, and he loves tennis, and he's watching the French Open and what's going on there. And so, just being in a relationship with people, being loving, share your love. Don't just be caught up in your own worry. Those things will take care of themselves, but be loving and caring and show people that you're there. And then next thing you know, your hard times will go through and become better times. And hard times become better times when you think outside of yourself.
That's absolutely true. Remember, the comeback always starts with getting through the crap. You got this. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fall, Rise, Give, where we explore stories of resilience, growth, and giving back. If you enjoyed today's episode, please visit our website at www.fallrisegive.com. Also, consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform and leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, every fall is a chance to rise, and every rise is an opportunity to give. Until next time, keep falling, rising, and giving. This is Fall, Rise, Give, produced by podcastforhire.com. Thank you for listening.